Well, the murder of Reeva Steenkamp is revisited 9 years later in Mnet's exclusive 3-part documentary, My Name is Reeva. This time from the perspective of her distraught parents, Barry and June Steenkamp. Take a look at this.
South African police have charged Oscar Pistorius with murder.
She will never have her wedding. She will never have our grandchild.
Before I knew it, I'd fired 4 shots at the door.
Your version is so improbable.
Did a woman scream? What led up to Reeva ending up behind the door screaming?
He's the person that unfortunately pulled the trigger. Only he knows why and what led to it and what the reasons are.
Now the South African is up for parole, but first he has to convince the victim's parents that he is sorry.
We want this behind us. I'll get closure if he tells me the truth.
Well, joining me now is the head scriptwriter, Strydom, and director, Batchelor, to tell us more about the documentary and the process, of course, of putting it together. A warm welcome to both the gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us in our studios this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
She was just watching the trailer. There's a lot of emotion going on in there. And I was actually thinking, when I was preparing for this conversation, it's been almost over 9 years since the incident actually happened. And immediately what flooded back was memories of all the reporting, because it was internationally, the news broke. And as we were sort of acclimating to that, then it was the murder trial and, you know, scene by scene being taken through what could possibly have happened that fateful night. I want to know from you, Warren, as the director, how different is this lens going to be for viewers, given the other different lenses that we've already been exposed to when it comes to the story?
Well, firstly, we give a voice to Reeva. And Reeva's voice is told, and her story is told, because she was voiceless. Throughout the trial, she was called the model girlfriend, the victim, the deceased. So we give a name to Reeva. And that's the one thing we do. The other thing that this documentary does show is new evidence that has come to light, new forensic evidence has come to light that gives the viewer a new perspective on what happened that fateful night. So we shed new light on it, and we give an alternative view, and we let the viewer decide for themselves what is the truth. Because I think in this documentary, we pursue truth. What is the truth? So I think that's what we try and do the best that we could.
And Justin, as scriptwriter, I mean, you had to piece together a lot of the sort of information that was coming in from the different interviews. What was that process like? And at all times, what was the thread for you? What was the message that you were trying to get across?
So I'm going to feed on what Warren just said. We decided very early on that we wanted this to be Reeva's story. And so that became our thread. And we also knew that there were 3 elements that we really wanted to explore. The first was Reeva's life growing up. Then we knew that the VOD process was coming, and that was very challenging for us because that story was happening while we were writing, while we were shooting. So it was quite an intense process. And then the final one was that night. We knew that those 3 stories were somehow going to have to interweave with each other. And I guess what we were really hoping to do, the message that we wanted to, and it's difficult because, you know, with a complex story like this, there are multiple messages, there's multiple moments that have a powerful impact on you as the viewer. But I do think that what we really wanted to do more than anything else was present Reeva's perspective as much as possible, you know, because she's not here, but she does live on. That's the beautiful thing, is she lives on through her parents. And in a lot of ways, it's not always a voluntary thing, but they are the voice of Reeva in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, talking about Reeva's parents, they've sort of kind of stepped out of the limelight, the spotlight, since the conclusion of the court proceedings. And to see them come up again after so long, how did you get them to do that, one? And two, how even in the interview process did you get them to speak about such an intimate, vulnerable, very personal, very tragic experience that they have, something that they're clearly, just from the clips, are still grieving over?
Well, you know, June and Barry, the reason that they did this, and the reason they agreed to participate in this, was they wanted to keep Reeva's name alive. And not only that, they wanted to give a voice to the voiceless. Because there's so many victims out there that don't have a voice. And the reason that Reeva has a voice is because this was such a high-profile case. So many victims have fallen foul to the people that are supposed to love them the most and supposed to protect them. And Reeva was now able to do that. And June and Barry, they really want, that's the main reason why they did this. You know, they obviously are grieving, and still to this day, nearly 10 years later, they are grieving. But they do want to give a voice to the voiceless.
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
So Warren, I think what can't be underestimated is the amount of time that Warren spent on this project and the relationship that he formed with Barry and June. He won't talk about that, but it is a very complicated process, and it is a very difficult process because those people that followed the media reports will see that people had very specific opinions and views about Barry and June. And they never chose to be in the spotlight. They never chose to become well-known, and they dealt with it the way, you know, untrained people deal with it. They survive. And I think it was very difficult for them to trust anybody with a story like this because it can be kind of told in so many different ways. And I think what they did do is they trusted Warren to tell the story as sensitively and as beautifully as possible. And I guess that's where we were. We made it, because the difficulty with this story is it's so easy to get trapped in that sensational space.
Yes.
It's, you know, the Oscar did this and Oscar did that, and we lose sight of Reeva all over again. And that was the promise that we made, is we were not going to fall foul of that.
Yeah. You know, the aspect of the new forensic evidence that has come up is so interesting for me, and I think for a lot of viewers that will be a key curiosity. And we've seen, you know, with a lot of the gender-based violence cases that have sort of been in the spotlight, we know how crucial a role evidence plays, and we know how oftentimes perpetrators get off because of a lack of evidence. What are you hoping viewers will learn from this new evidence that you'll be presenting? And I suppose, what did it expose to you about the criminal justice system and perhaps some of the gaps that are existing there?
Well, if I could just come in there before I answer that question. On the victim offender dialogue process that Barry and June were put through, which is a contentious issue. You know, there's some people that are for it and some people that are against it. You know, the fact that Barry had to go and meet the killer of his daughter was a huge traumatic experience. Okay, and Barry wanted truth. So I'm not going to give too much away because you need to watch. But what we found out in our new forensic evidence is there is evidence that wasn't presented. So I'm leaving it up to the viewer to make their mind up.
Wow. And I get the sense that that's the experience. It is for the viewer to make their own minds up at the end of watching the docuseries.
We stay neutral. We present both sides. We present all the arguments, and it's up to the viewer to decide.
I think that was a very important thing that Warren also really insisted on. We built this entire set, which, you know, was Oscar's room, literally to the centimeter, with everything, the bed, the duvet cover, everything that became crucial evidence we built into this space. And I think those people the viewers that have seen episode 1 will know that we presented Oscar's version. And we did it as accurately as possible. We stuck to his testimony. And what became very evident for us, and I think this was the crux of it, was not necessarily what Oscar did, because he explained that. but it's what Reeva did. And that became incredibly challenging for us to present Oscar's version as accurately as possible, the way he told it, and then to take a look at what because he didn't really explain what she did. She became a ghost at a certain point in that story, and it's quite remarkable to see what she did. And then the question that we find ourselves asking each other is, knowing what we know about Reeva, would she have behaved like that? And that becomes really important because the audience does get to know Reeva.
Right. This is riveting stuff, gentlemen, and I want to thank you both for coming into our studios and shedding some light on this docu-series that is already airing on Mnet. That is head scriptwriter Justin Strydom and director Warren Batchelor.